Hi people, it's Archivist here, and today I'm going to be talking about the much anticipated Star Wars Battlefront coming to the PlayStation 4, PC and Xbox One this November. In this video I'm going to be talking about a few things that we are definitely going to see, some things that I would like to see, and finally a few concerns just to make this video balanced. So let's begin with the general gameplay aspects, and I'll start by saying that all these facts in this video are sourced from battlefrontupdates.com, and if you want to visit it I'll leave a link in the description for you. So, there will be no traditional campaign but instead missions to mimic iconic battles. That might seem like it's a downside because there's no dedicated narrative, but when you look at previous offerings by DICE when it comes to single player modes, they're not that great, let's be honest. So Battlefield 3 and 4, their campaigns felt very much tacked on, and I think it's better to really prioritise what matters here. And the fact they're going to get to play these iconic missions anyway is going to be narrative in a sense enough, because when you see the Hoth battle like in this gameplay video, you already know why this is happening if you're a fan of Star Wars. Also, the game will apparently run at 60 frames per second on all platforms. Whether that's going to be a solid 60 frames per second, well, I think we're going to have to wait for that. The game will focus on the original trilogy and not the prequel era, which I have two minds about. Although yes, the prequel films were largely accepted to be inferior to the originals, there were some decent battles in there that I would have liked to have seen in this game. Shame it's not there, but in some ways it means they can prioritise and focus on the original trilogy battles, which are far more iconic. Also, in the DLC you're going to get to play battles from the new film Episode 7, which is going to be very exciting. The game is also going to use a buddy system where two people can form a group and spawn on each other, which is good because it means if you're inviting someone else to play with you, rather than being separated on these huge battles, you can stick together. Very intelligent implementation if you ask me. The game will focus on surface warfare, including dogfights with space fighters, which is good. You get to use space fighters, but sadly you can't go into outer space and fight with them. There are also going to be co-op missions, both offline and split screen, and also in certain game modes there are going to be bots. The health system in the game is going to be based on a regeneration system where when you leave combat it regenerates. Very similar to Call of Duty, just very familiar to anyone who's played a modern first-person shooter. In terms of the multiplayer game modes, they're going to be up to 40 people online, which isn't the biggest, but I think that's going to satisfy most people, especially when you consider there are going to be massive vehicles like the AT-AT. We also know about some game modes. Some don't have much information on them yet, but others they do seem to tell us what they're about. There's one called Cargo, no information sadly. One called Drop Zone, sadly no information. Fighter Squadron, which is essentially like space battles, but rather than being set in space, it's set over the vistas of these planets, so maybe flying through the mountains and the hills. Pretty cool, really. There's Heroes versus Villains. Although there's no information, I would guess that that's Sith versus Jedi, and including like major villain and hero characters such as, I guess, Boba Fett and maybe Han Solo if he's included. There's Supremacy, no information. Walker Assault, which I think is exactly what you're seeing here, so no description needed. So those were the general online multiplayer modes, but you've also got the single player and co-op game modes. You've got some that are fairly unspecific, but you've got two names that I know of. There's Battles, where you go head to head with a friend supported by the army of AI, which I think essentially means that, say you got two people, and you would choose to play as maybe the rebels, your friend chooses to play as the Empire. They control one major character, maybe not a major character, maybe just a regular guy, and you fight each other, and apart from you, everyone else is AI. And I think that's actually a really good idea, and I'm very excited to do that, because that really does put it on an even playing field, because I've had it in the past where I've wanted to play against my friends online. I want it to be a big battle, but one of us clearly has the better team. But in this, it's all AI, so it's actually a lot fairer. I think that's a really good idea, and I'm surprised it's not more common, to be honest. It seems like a really good common sense game mode. There's also hero battles where two iconic characters fight each other, like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Seems like a really good mode. Also, if you're playing as the Rebels, there's a survival mode where I think it's essentially Horde mode, and there's also going to be some Imperial specific missions, which there isn't much about either. In terms of vehicles, there's the AT-ST, the AT-AT, the Speeder Bikes, the Millennium Falcon, awesome, Snowspeeder, TIE Fighter, X-Wing and Y-Wing. In terms of iconic characters that are going to appear in the game, there are some that are very likely to be in the game and others that are confirmed. Some are just going to appear, some are going to be playable heroes. And I think 3 that are definitely going to be playable heroes are Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. You'll see that in this gameplay trailer. There's also Boba Fett. There's R2-D2 and C-3PO who are meant to be in the game in some way. Maybe they're advisors. I don't think you'd play as them in a battle though. I can't imagine C-3PO being particularly useful. Also, Han Solo and Chewbacca are likely to be in the game because there's the Millennium Falcon, so you'd think logically they'd be there, and also Leia. So now I'm going to move on to the things that haven't been confirmed but I would like to see in the game. So first of all is a decent saber-on-saber fight system. In Battlefront 2, when you clash as a Jedi and a Sith, yes, there was an element of awesomeness to it simply because it's a Jedi and a Sith. There was never a decent fighting system put into the game, and doing that in an online game, yes, it can be awkward, but if you get it right, if it looks authentic, that's going to do a lot for it. I don't really want it to be a case of you just run up to people, false choke when it recharges, just mash the X button or the square button, whatever you're playing on, until they die. I'd like a system essentially based on timing or countering. Also, another thing I'd like to see, and yes, they have said they're not doing it, but I still want to see it, is at some point space battles. So I think it's pretty confident to say we won't see these in the main game when it comes out, but maybe a DLC further down the line could introduce just one map where we go into outer space. And okay, if that can't happen, which I'm pretty certain it can't, maybe if we get a sequel to this game, maybe that will have space battles in it. That would be very good. I understand why they're not in this game, but I'd really like to see them implemented at some point, maybe further down the line. Also, although they say they're not going to focus on the prequels, I did quite like playing as the droids in the original Star Wars Battlefront. I think my favourite unit in the entire game that wasn't a hero was the Droidecker, the one that can roll around and put up shields. It's a really unique kind of unit, and I really enjoy playing as it because you had so much defensive capabilities, but at the same time when you were rolling around you were really vulnerable. And it's actually a really unique kind of unit for this kind of game, and I feel that if they maybe not bring back those original battles, so don't bother with the maps, I understand that's a lot of effort, but bring some of those units back like the droids, that could be quite cool, especially the Droidecker. And now finally just moving on to a few concerns I have about the game. Now first and foremost, this is a multiplayer game, and moreover it's going to be a very popular multiplayer game, and that does mean that server issues are very likely. Although yes, they're going to try and prepare for that, every single time these AAA games come out and server issues come about, the publisher or the developer will say, we just don't know how much our systems can take until day one, until they're put under real strain. Now you can either choose to pre-order the game and potentially be a part of those people who get really frustrated, or you can wait a bit for it to get sorted out and start playing with it being really good. Have your first experience be a pure, satisfying and, well, essentially working one. And that is why I won't be pre-ordering this game, and as excited as you can tell I am for this game, I wouldn't recommend pre-ordering it. I never recommend you pre-order a game unless it's on Steam and you can get a definite refund, because it just does not make sense in this day and age with all the potential issues that can come about with these AAA games to put down your money in advance. And I really urge you not to fall into the traps when they offer you these deluxe editions, where they offer you fleeting things to put down a little bit of money. I really urge you not to do that. And also, in a similar vein, I really hope the PC port isn't a disaster. I say that because these days it just happens so much, you just don't know when it's going to happen. And you might say to me, well, DICE, they've made great PC games before, Battlefield games were great. Well, yeah, so did Rocksteady, and look at the recent Arkham Knight game, that was appalling. So you just don't know these days. It does not make sense to risk it by pre-ordering it, in my opinion. But on the whole, I'm very excited for it, but be aware that things can go wrong with AAA games. So that concludes this video. As always, people, thanks very much for watching, and the Force be with you.